In this video, we discuss why over 60% of Americans are more afraid of retiring than death, and more importantly, what's real and what's not. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
According to the website Live Career, 61% of Americans are more afraid of retirement than they are death. It's not surprising because retirement is a big unknown, and once you retire, it's hard to undo that decision. In this video, we're going to pull back the curtain and talk about some of the areas where people might be afraid, where they don't really need to be afraid, and we're going to talk about some of the areas where they actually should pay close attention. The first big issue that people fear is running out of money early. That's not surprising because a lot of times in retirement, people live 20, 30, even 40 years. And how can you save for 20 to 40 years if you only worked for 30 to 40 years in most cases? Their mind starts doing the math pretty quickly, and they think, well, I haven't saved 25 to 50% of my income every year for the last 20, 30, 40 years, so how can I have enough to retire? To begin with, it's important to know the typical structure of retirement spending. Now, everybody's different, but most people spend less in retirement than they do when they were working, unless they just really felt like, you know what, this is my time, and I've been saving for the last 40 years for this moment. But most of the time, when you go into retirement, you spend less. And in particular, spending takes on a bit of a U-shape. You spend more in the beginning years of retirement and in the ending years of retirement. And the second part is on medical expenses. First part is on travel and other things that you couldn't get to before. But the middle is less spending. That's just the nature of retirement for most people. And if there's going to be a shock, usually it happens in the first year. This is the year that people typically overspend if they're going to overspend. And it's important going into retirement that you have a retirement budget so that you know exactly how much you can spend. With good planning, safe withdrawal strategies, and perhaps even some part-time work, retirement doesn't need to be a drain on your savings. In fact, a lot of people go into retirement and find that they have more money 10 years after they retire than when they entered retirement. The next fear is loss of purpose or identity. Now, most people, when you ask them to tell you about themselves, they start off with what they do for a career. I'm a doctor, I'm a plumber, I'm a lawyer, I'm an electrician. Whatever it is, that's what they lead with. Eventually, they get around to the family structure and go from there. Now, once they're actually in retirement, the narrative starts to change. I was a plumber or I was a doctor until I retired is usually what they lead with. And when they reach the age when their friends are also retired, the narrative changes again. I'm the mother of 2 beautiful girls. I am the grandfather of 6 great grandkids. I'm the spouse of 30 years with my partner. The fact is, retirement can be a launch pad for interests, volunteering, a lot of things. And most retirees eventually find meaning in those things rather than what they did for work when they were working. Point 3, they're afraid of healthcare costs. Now, this one is one to pay attention to. Fortunately, there are some ways to protect yourself, but let's talk about the fear and how to protect yourself. Unpredictable medical expenses in retirement can be devastating financially, and this is one that people read about all the time. The reason is simple. As we get older, we require more medical attention. Now, fortunately, there's an offset. It's called Medicare and a Medigap policy and a Medicare Part D plan, which covers drugs. But the fact is, you have to pay for most of that. If you do have these in place, though, they don't cover everything, but they cover the vast majority of your medical costs. But the one area that they don't cover is long-term care. Long-term care costs can be devastating, and the math is real. 7 out of 10 retirees will need some form of long-term care, and 20% of the group will require long-term care for 5 years or longer. And the big problem here is that when people enter retirement, they're still young enough to think that they're never going to need big medical care. But as they enter the elder stage of retirement, that's when a lot of these costs start to kick in. Most of the time anyway. Some long-term care costs start and end in the home, meaning that somebody comes in and they provide assistance when needed. Others require people to move into an assisted living facility, and still others require people to move into a skilled nursing home. Now, this is one to really focus in on because the odds are not on your side here, with 7 out of 10 people in retirement eventually needing some form of long-term care. HSA and long-term care policies can help, as well as planning for long-term care costs with appropriate savings. Gang, Social Security can be confusing. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this. The biggest one is that it's 90 years old this month, and your parents' Social Security isn't your Social Security. There's been a lot added to and taken away from Social Security over its 90-year history. There's also a lot of bad misinformation out there that was created just for your click. So if you're confused or overwhelmed, don't just do what a friend or family member did, because their life isn't yours. Your situation is different than theirs. I created a course called Social Security Simplified to help make sense of a very confusing subject. And since the course is brand new, I'm offering a new course discount of 50% off until Labor Day. If this is of interest to you, go to holyschmidt.com/social security so that you can learn more about Social Security Simplified. The next point that people are afraid of is boredom or lack of structure. They envision long, uneventful days with nothing to do. Oftentimes, their model is their parents or their grandparents, and they did, for the most part, a generation ago or 2 generations ago, sit around and watch television until the day was over, and then they'd go to bed and get up and do it again the next day. So as a starting point, if your plan is just to sit around and see how the day unfolds, you will be bored and you won't have the structure. But if you have a plan, engage in hobbies, sports, dinner with friends. I don't know, I just picked up pickleball, for example, and it is challenging. In fact, with pickleball, I was surprised with 2 things. The first is that people are really serious about pickleball. And the second is that there's always that one person, I'll call him the commander, that tells everybody what to do. And he's the one that dictates the timing, gives you his view on whether a shot that he shot was in or out, even though it's on your side of the court, etc. And truth be told, when I realized how the sport actually played out, it made me want to stop playing pickleball, until I realized one thing about the commander at my gym, and that was he only had been playing pickleball for 6 months, and I felt like within a couple of months I could catch him. So I'm still playing pickleball. The big issue I have with pickleball is that if you get injured and you're in your 60s or 70s, it takes a lot longer to recover than if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. And so I take some time, take some lessons, and make sure that those lessons focus on the safety aspect first, and then how to win second. And don't let anybody push you into running for a ball that's not within your reach, or shaming you for not taking a dangerous shot where you could in fact injure yourself. Next up, people are afraid of market volatility. And there isn't a retiree that I know personally, and probably you're in that category as well, who didn't experience the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And they watched their portfolio drop and not recover for 5 full years. It didn't come back for 5 years. If you're in retirement, that's a long time to be lean with your spending, because you don't want to spend down and sell assets at a discount. Now, there are some strategies to mitigate this: the bucket approach, maintaining cash reserves, and others as well. So this is one that can be managed if you set your sights on the correct strategy. The next point is regret. Regret retiring too soon or too late. They are 2 sides of the same coin. Now, this one is interesting. Regret is one of those emotions that's less useful than other emotions, but it's also one that's quite prevalent in retirement. This is a conversation I had with a good friend of mine. We were having lunch recently and joking about when we were young adults and the things that we used to do, the silly things that people do when they're 18, 19, 20 years old. And after we laughed for a long time, his face got really serious. And he started talking about the things that he regrets today. I regret not going to college earlier, he said. And he talked about not graduating with his friends who went to college when he went to work. I said to him, "Can you change the outcome now?" To which he said, "Of course not." And then I followed up with, "What was good about not going to college? What did you get by not going to college? Was there something positive about not going to college?" And he said, "Well, I had a great career in sales and 2 wonderful children. And that's all I needed." I said, "Would you give up your 2 children, your 2 specific children that you have today, in order to go back in time and start college earlier?" And he said, "Absolutely not." Then I said, "Well, it probably sounds like you made the right choice then." Very few retirees regret retirement. This is particularly true if they prepared financially and emotionally. And if they haven't prepared financially, there's always the ability to work part-time to bridge the gap and stay ahead until whatever they have in savings starts to grow. People do it all the time. The next thing that they worry about is spending too much time with their spouse. Now, couples often find a different rhythm in retirement. Before retirement, in a lot of families anyway, one person worked and the other either worked part-time or they stayed home and watched the children, they watched the household. And in that dynamic, the spouse who stayed home only saw their partner maybe 3 hours a day. It's one thing when you see your partner 3 hours a day and then go to sleep. It's another when you see them 16 hours a day and then go to sleep. But the good news is that with more time, you also have time to adjust. And most couples report back that they spend more time now discussing different things that they never talked about before, planning their future, sharing their thoughts. But it will take time to change the rules of engagement. But most of the time they do change. Those rules of engagement were put in place when one partner managed one process, the other partner managed another. Now both partners are managing a joint process together. The next thing people are worried about is when to take Social Security. Now, Social Security isn't one choice. It's literally one choice of a dozen different options per person, maybe more. And a lot of variables go into that choice. And timing does matter. But for whatever reason, people spend more time planning things like what their next car is going to look like and how much to spend and where to acquire that car than they do planning their Social Security strategy. Many people just avoid the issue altogether and do what a friend or family member does, even though their financial situation is completely different. Others let fear take hold and they claim as early as possible because they're afraid of what's in the media. In this case, education is power, and spending time understanding what all of your Social Security options are and how it all fits together is very important. For most people, this is the single most important financial decision of their retirement life. And if this is you and you want to get more educated on Social Security, check out my course, Social Security Simplified. Go to holyschmidt.com/Social Security. As I mentioned earlier, it's 50% off until Labor Day, but Labor Day is coming quick. If you like this video, check out that video, why most people claim Social Security at age 62. Are they correct? This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.